Make sure you keep that same energy. Make sure you keep that same energy. Make sure you keep that same energy. Make sure you keep that same energy.
My G, coming through the crowd raw, big dog, you don't really wanna feel these claws. See, God loves me anyway, despite these flaws, so I gotta get a little buck, why, yeehaw. My God giving y'all the blessing, so I never tap out, no time for stressing. I'm confessing that I'm still learning lessons. When I get knocked down, get up stepping, cause I know how my blessings flow. Started from the crown down to the tiptoe. Holy Spirit, you the one that miss this flow, cause I'm talking about you and the whole trio. The Father's on top and they call me mijo. For my Latino, this Jesucristo. My God, my lingual, so if you didn't know, I'ma speak English, me amigo.
Make sure you keep that same energy. Make sure you keep that same energy. Make sure you keep that same energy.
Hey, how y'all doing? It's Rick Sincere with MTMV Sports. I'm so blessed to be joined today. I'm geeked overlated, man. Y'all don't even know, man. I'm so happy to be joined today by Mr. Eric Moody. Yo, so we talked about him, playing offensive lineman over at Nickel State, which has some, ties to Louisiana. So y'all know that's a heart pounder for me, man. But I'm so happy to be here with you. Look, a writer at one point for Gridiron Experts started off kind of just tweeting, right? Like tweeting and sharing your opinions on players. And then that wound up into an opportunity with Gridiron Experts, formerly the Fantasy Football Locker Room. But now he's written over 500 articles for ESPN, Pro Football Network, The Athletic, RotoViz, Fantasy Pros, and so many more outlets. He uses advanced metrics, and that's a term that we got to get into today. But use advanced metrics to help and advise and guide, so many people to fantasy championships. And look, I know you're out there, and I know if some people are watching it like, yo, man, I don't need no fantasy advice. Stop it. I brought an expert here to help you today on your fantasy championship run. So happy to have you here with us. Thank you so much, the amazing Mr. Eric Moody. How are you doing today?
No, doing pretty good. I like how you name dropped Nickel State and all those other things in there. So it's always good to hear. But yeah, Rick, thanks for the for the invite. Happy to be here. Looking forward to chatting with you.
Awesome. So look, you have a very unique approach on how you analyze fantasy football decisions. How do you employ advanced metrics in your analysis?
Yeah, for me, I think it's eerily similar to how people like evaluate like different stocks, and I'll start there and then kind of transition into how it relates to football. So there's really two types of analysis if you're looking at evaluating a stock. You have some people that'll use like fundamental analysis and technical analysis. Like fundamental analysis is really, the type of company, what is that company, what service or product does it offer, what's is that company's earnings report, going to look like, and other things like that. Then you look at technical analysis, that's really more giving you insight into when to buy that stock or when to sell. You're looking at like moving averages, you're looking at how the price changes per day, whether you're using point and figure charts or other charts out there. But so you typically have like a camp. Like I'm in the fundamental analysis camp or I'm in the technical analysis camp. Kind of like with football when you look at those that are just solely go only on film or others that go on metrics. And so my whole mantra, even when you're looking at it from like a stock perspective, is just why not play the piano with both hands? So like you can really make great music by playing, with one hand, but when you combine like both of those disciplines, you could really create, some really excellent, pieces, or pieces of music. And so that's kind of the mantra that I've taken. How when you look at football, what's interesting is that you have some that are diehard, pounding the table for film analysis only. Like that's all they go through. Oh, I don't care about these metrics, etc. I'm just only going to go by what my eyes, can see. Then you got others that are like on the other end of the spectrum that are like, I could care less about film. The metrics are going to tell me everything that I need to know. So my whole philosophy has been, why not just play play the piano with both hands? Why not understand from a film perspective, hey, here's what this player can do. Here's what I see with my own eyes. Here's my analysis of that. But on the other side of things, why not use some of these metrics and things that are out there, whether it's yards per route run or yards before contact or after contact, or if you're looking at like a tight end or a receiver, target separation. How many yards of separation are they getting before the target gets there? And so that's been my whole mantra, just to kind of pair both of those worlds together in perfect harmony.
There are people who do avoid advanced metrics, right? Not only solely because of like their thoughts on just being able to see the film, but some people avoid it for other reasons, right? Like maybe they find it confusing. What do people find confusing about advanced metrics?
Yeah, I probably think the biggest reason why people find them confusing is that they don't really take the time to kind of understand the metric, how the metric works, how it's calculated, how it I guess relates to what it's trying to track. Whether it's I'll kind of pick on the other one that I used before, like yards before contact or after contact, or like target separation. So I think if you really spend some time just trying to understand like what the metric is trying to tell you, I think that's one hurdle to get over. I think the second one is just in the society that we're in. It's like we're used to getting everything and understanding everything like quickly, like now, 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 now. You go to social media, you kind of see what's trending. You get synopsis on things. Attention spannings are shortened, by social media and tablets and smartphones and stuff like that. I'm old enough to remember a time where we didn't have any of that kind of stuff. It's like where, to entertain yourself, you have to go outside and then play with people. You didn't have multiplayer video games. You may have a Nintendo, 2 controllers, but it was just different. So I kind of joke about that as for where the time commitment is often the piece that people don't get over that hurdle. But if you take the time to truly understand like the different metrics, what they're trying to tell you, it's just going to make you an even more informed like football fan, in my opinion.
Love it. Okay, so even, I know you're playing with both hands, but still sometimes we get surprised, right? We get surprised by what's happening on the field. So what has surprised you this season? Which players have surprised you as in terms of their productivity? And then maybe secondly, some people who've disappointed you, even based on the metrics, right? Based on their lack of productivity.
Yeah, I would say one name that comes to mind as someone that really like surprised me is Cordarrelle Patterson, with the Falcons. Like you look at the numbers, I'm like he's currently the RB7 in PPR formats, but you think about the off-season like story, it's like Christian McCaffrey goes down last season. Unfortunately, he's going down again. That's a whole nother conversation. But then you had Mike Davis filling in very admirably for Christian McCaffrey and the Panthers, so he did well. He basically played his way into a contract with the Falcons. So that kind of led me to believe, and like others, that, hey, Atlanta's getting this guy. Todd Gurley experiment didn't go well. They're going to lean heavily on him. That just wasn't the case. But one thing that was really interesting is that like the new head coach, Arthur Smith and his staff, I think they've demonstrated and shown us this season that, hey, we know how to use Cordarrelle Patterson. And it's a great thing to see. They've positioned him for success, for a guy that's, I think he's like 30 or 31 now, to have this kind of success after so many people had written him off. I think it's really a great thing to see. So that's someone whose productivity, has surprised me. I would say someone else that comes to mind where I was really expecting like more production was Devontae Smith. I'm like, he's like a film, darling. You look at his ability to run routes, his catching ability, he's got the athleticism, all those intangibles that you look for. And then heading into this season from like a fantasy lens, I'm thinking, okay, this is a guy when you look at his average draft position that you can acquire like at a wide receiver 3 price, but potentially as the season progresses, he will become a wide receiver 2. That just has not happened. It's a lot of different factors involved. You can't entirely blame, Jalen Hurts, even though I know some, may want to do that. So it's a lot of different factors. Ultimately, it just hasn't come to be. I'm like, he's averaged 6.3 targets, 54 receiving yards, and 11 PPR fantasy points per game this season. I'm like, you look at wide receiver 1 performances, he only has 3, and has 2 wide receiver 2 performances this season. It's painful to say, but there's a guy is currently the wide receiver 31 in fantasy. I'll close on one other name. Won't go into quite as much detail. That was very disappointing. And I would say DK Metcalf. He's been a disappointment, and particularly like the second half of the season. I'm like, he's currently the wide receiver 21. You're like, yeah, not too bad. He started off strong though. Weeks 1 through 8, he had 18 fantasy points per game. However, second half of the season's come along. He's being outperformed by Tyler Lockett. So, that's like the epitome of someone that, could be like a sell high, if you're looking at trades, because he's just has not gotten it together. And I don't really think that he will. Tyler Lockett's talented as well, and he's got rapport with Russell Wilson. With that team simply trying to win games, I'm like, I could see Wilson going to him even more.
Look, I was hoping for some type. I just play DK Metcalf all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And I do it I do it blindly, right? Because I'm expecting an explosive day at some point, right? He's had matchups where he should, be explosive. This last one, like, what are you talking about, right? So, like, I don't know what's going on with him at all. So we have somebody in the comments, right? We have a friend in the comments, Crispy, right? He wants to know your favorite MLS team.
A favorite MLSD. Wow. Let me think about that for a second. That's Major League Soccer, right?
Yeah.
with all the stuff with
Yeah.
with football and basketball, I was like, wow,
I know, I
soccer.
know, I know.
I would say, oh man, his name escapes me. I know they've got a team that's here. Oh gosh, this is bad. Here, I'm about to look it up real quick. It's crazy.
You
'Cause I
know
have
what?
seen the
I go
FC
to
Dallas. FC Dallas.
bad.
I have taken my son to to see some of those games. My daughter likes soccer too, but I'll be transparent. I can't say that I follow them as the season goes on.
Yo, so I heard what you said about Smith. I was hoping, like most people were hoping, that he would catch fire later on, maybe like a Waddle, right? Like a Chase.
Mhm.
You think that like these are rookie receivers who are going off right now, and I thought that maybe he would catch fire like that. But sometimes in some leagues you could probably find Smith on the waiver wire because people are so upset, right?
Yeah.
That brings us to the waiver wire. Let's talk about waiver wire for a second. Who are some players that are on waiver wires right now, right? That could help some teams through this playoff and championship push.
Yeah, we're in the thick of it. With the change, the game being added and fantasy playoffs being changed. I'll say a couple of names that come to mind. I want to try to hit on as many names as possible, so I may not go into too much detail. But I really like at quarterback, Tua. I like him quite a bit. Really good matchups the rest of the way, and I think he continues to be really underrated, by many in fantasy. Justin Fields is another one with his rushing ability. He's always going to be a viable streamer, and he really had like I would say last week like his best game as a passer. Someone else that I didn't think that I'll be talking about really at this time of the year for the waiver wire is Ben Roethlisberger. And I think he's available in a lot of leagues, but he's someone that's he's got the receiving weapons that are there. He's got Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool. He's got Pat Fryermuth, so he's got some weapons. So he's someone that's on the streaming radar. I would say running back. I know a name that everyone is going to be rushing to get is Rashad Penny. With the performance that he had. And it appears that Pete Carroll, the Seahawks, are going to let him lead that committee. I know they said other running backs would be involved, but he looked really good last week. I got to admit. So, and I'm sure he wants to build on that performance. Another name that's really under the radar too that I like is Amir Abdullah. Most people think Christian McCaffrey going down, Chuba Hubbard time. But I really like what Amir Abdullah brings to the table. They also use him quite a bit as a receiver out of the backfield when you look at his targets and the number of routes that he runs per game. And another name that's just coming back to the Dolphins, who is returning to a situation where he'll be really fantasy relevant, is Malcolm Brown. I'm like, we haven't seen Malcolm Brown since I believe like October. He's coming back off injured reserve, and he's coming into a situation where COVID-19 is decimating that locker room. Myles Gaskin, all those guys are out, so he may be coming into a scenario for where he's a starter and part of the committee with Duke Johnson. So once I found out that Brown was coming back, I was initially excited for Duke Johnson. Hey, he gets another opportunity here. But then where you hear rumblings that hey, Malcolm Brown's coming back this week, that's a guy that I would prioritize in waivers. At wide receiver, and I'll close out a couple of defenses. Wide receiver, obviously Gabriel Davis, huge fan of his game. Emmanuel Sanders going down, and Davis filling the void. I'm like he was targeted quite a bit, and he also was running like a ton of routes. So if you extrapolate that over like a full game, because the expectation is that Sanders is not going to play, he's someone that's a really solid wide receiver 3 or flex option with significant upside, and that's regardless if Josh Allen plays or Mitch Trubisky, who has been also like underrated, but he's a very viable fantasy quarterback due to his rushing ability, but he's got enough skills to get the ball to Davis, which is what we're looking for. Devontae Parker's another one that's returned and has performed very well. KJ Osborne, I know everyone has got a glimpse of what he's capable of. Kendrick Bourne, Amon-Ra St. Brown, those are some names I really like at wide receiver. Now, if you're looking at defense and you're streaming for this week, got to go with the Dolphins going up against the Jets, and the Browns this week are obviously in a really good position as well.
I love that. So for Parker, I want to know a little bit about Parker. How much do you think Parker, like what's the feeling for Parker, right? With Waddle being such a big part of that offense. And it seems like all the targets are going that way. Like where do you see Parker kind of fitting in? Is it around red zone time? Is that where Parker kind of fits in your opinion?
No, not necessarily just the red zone. I think really like all over the field. I'm like they ultimately help each other because if you've got a guy like Parker and Waddle on the field at the same time, they're obviously going to have to defenses. You have to make a decision. I'm like we're going to have to cover both of these guys. So I think they help out each other, very well. One thing with Parker. I'm like the last time we saw the Dolphins, I'm like he looked solid. He was able to suit up for the first time, excuse me, since week 8, I believe. He had 5 receptions, and 5 targets for 62 yards, and so I think that's a reasonable type of floor that you can expect, from a guy like Parker. Then we look at the matchups too. I'm like you've got the Jets obviously this week. He's in a really good position. But then for those in fantasy, I'm like you've got the Saints coming up and then the Titans, and so he's someone where if you're looking at it from a fantasy lens, I think he's giving you a wide receiver 3 floor. I think the ceiling is like a wide receiver 2 in my opinion, just depending on how he gets going, and obviously if he gets that touchdown or not.
Look, you made Kanye Westside very happy. He's a Dolphins fan, right? You mentioned this Dolphins. Westside says Dolphins defense is also trending up, right? So you absolutely made him a happy guy. We talked about who to pick up, right? Who are some players? Because as you pick people up, you got to make decisions on who to drop, right? So who are some players that kind of in your opinion are like maybe either put to the bench or some players I could possibly drop in these last few weeks just based on their matchups or are they like a productivity?
Yeah, I would say a couple of names that immediately came to mind. I know once you mentioned you were going to ask me this is my whole mindset is that, hope is not a strategy, especially when it comes to winning fantasy leagues. And so, Cortland Sutton, dump him. Kenny Galladay, dump him. Guys like Carson Wentz, if you got him. I think there's other streamers that have more upside, dump him. Fortunately, Emmanuel Sanders, I like his game quite a bit. He's someone that you can dump. Allen Robinson, it's just not going to happen this year. He's another player that you can dump. And I would say something else that I would just let everyone know is that if you're looking at your lineup, I know every lineup is different, and if you've got more lineup-specific questions, definitely reach out to me on Twitter, very active on the platform, at Eric and Moody. Happy to help with more detailed questions. But you want to look at your roster and say, okay, we're in the final countdown. Cue the music, someone. Da-da-da-da. So we're in the final countdown. So you're looking at your roster and you're thinking, okay, if there's someone that I can't imagine in a scenario starting, I would go ahead and dump them. What you want to do is, especially for running backs, because that landscape is barren, is like the wasteland of the Mad Max films, that you want to sit there and prioritize like lottery tickets who could inherit like monster workloads. Like Dearness Johnson was one. He's in a position to see additional touches. You think of Darrell Williams. He's someone that's been solid for the Chiefs. Scored a touchdown on a reception last week. Tied to a really good offense. Wayne Gallman. Samaje Perine, with Joe Mixon, you just don't know what happened there. Khalil Herbert, he's shown glimpses earlier this season. Devontae Booker, you think of guys like Ronald Jones. Benjamin, everyone's been enamored with what James Conner's been able to do. Chase Edmonds doesn't come back, or if Conner goes down, I think Benjamin will be the guy. I like his game quite a bit from breaking it down in college. Peyton Barber's another one, Carlos Hyde. I'm just throwing some names out there to get your wheels turning. These are the type of players that you want to prioritize for where you can have like a plug and play, running back 1 potentially, or running back 2 or upside flex option if someone gets injured. So that's how I would approach with players to drop and who to acquire, just your rosters overall.
Crispy really loved your singing version.
We'll save that for another stream. Surprisingly, I do like karaoke a lot. You cannot see like my entire space, but I'm a bass guitar player, so I've got 3 bass guitars back there. And I'll give you a quick fun fact. I know you got some other questions. Is that I played bass guitar for years. Played in bands like in college. I don't play in bands now just because work responsibilities, family life. I still play a lot for fun, usually a couple times a week. And so in a band I played in college, I've done like lead vocals, backing vocals, and played bass. But we'll save that for another day.
Yo, bet. I love it. Yo, so I like that strategy though. I love that strategy of, like picking lottery tickets, right? Somebody may go down. And instead of waiting on a waiver wire claim, you already have the person, right? You already have Perine. You mentioned Perine. If Mixon goes down, you already have Perine, right? Yeah. Because you've kind of loaded up on those lottery tickets. I like that a lot. All right, cool. So a lot of people are getting into playing DFS right now, right? Because either their fantasy season is over, basically, right? Because they have no chance of making the playoffs, or they just like, making a little money. So if we talk about DFS for a minute, who are some players that could help some DFS teams in these last few weeks, right? So either because they cost a lot, but they're worth it, right? So they cost a lot, that their normal price or their average price is high, but it doesn't matter because they're worth it and you want to pay that price for them. Or they're cheap, right? But they provide excellent value. So who are some of those players?
Yeah, and I've got some names that kind of fit that criteria at the different positions, and I was mainly thinking about like from weeks 15 through 17, just because of with fantasy typically the playoffs end at that time frame. So just that's a caveat when I go through some of these names. I know at quarterback, I just really like watching Tua. Love the schedule, love the way that he's played. So I think he's someone that can exceed expectations, if you're playing DFS, whether it's DraftKings or FanDuel. Tom Brady's another one. People talk about, father time and all these different things. But, the guy's playing lights out, and I really like the schedule. Aaron Rodgers is another one. I must admit, I am kind of concerned about the foot injury to kind of see what happens there. I like him. Matthew Stafford and Kirk Cousins is someone that's been underrated. He's played really well this year, and I don't think he's really been the cause of a lot of the issues that the Vikings have had. You look at his numbers, he's been phenomenal. Russell Wilson, I'm curious to see how he looks this week, but he's someone that could end up trending up. Could be a really intriguing DFS value. I would say running backs. Obviously, James Conner, he's someone that's worth paying for. You just look at the results and the performance from him this year. I mentioned Cordero Patterson earlier, like him quite a bit. Devontae Freeman, in the Ravens backfield, whether it's Lamar Jackson out there or the backup, he's still someone that you can depend on. Obviously, Chuba Hubbard and Amir Abdullah. I do prefer Abdullah just because of the passing game usage, especially when you look at the Panthers schedule. David Montgomery's another one. Do like Joe Mixon, and then really anyone that's in that Browns backfield. I know Hunt is out, but I think Nick Chubb and Dearness Johnson will be solid DFS options. I'll close out on wide receivers and tight ends. I would say any of the Cardinals receivers, for the rest of the season. DeAndre Hopkins, A.J. Green, Christian Kirk. I really like A.J. Green a lot going into this, last week. I know they played last night. And so I know he was someone that I mentioned in my Week 14 streaming column. I know he's chasing a couple of records, too, that he was able to hit last night. So I felt like he'd be actively involved. But he's been solid whenever Kyler Murray's been under center. Russell Gage, Marquise Brown, Rashad Bateman, especially if Sammy Watkins is out. That's going to give him more snaps, more opportunities. Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, DJ Moore. That's a little bit more risk with this one, but I do like Darnell Mooney. I love their schedule, but it's just, you just never know what you're going to get. I guess like a box of chocolates, Forrest Gump style when it comes to Justin Fields. The Bengals receivers, Jamar Chase finally reminded us why they drafted him so high. I know T. Higgins is still a solid option. Tyler Boyd. I was going to mention before the news that broke before we recorded this, with Jarvis Landry, but I do really like Donovan Peoples-Jones quite a bit as well. And really any of those Rams receivers, you've got OBJ, Odell Beckham, Van Jefferson, and Cooper Kupp. Kupp is obviously an easy, slam dunk, but I actually do prefer Van Jefferson to Odell Beckham. I know they're running like an eerily similar number of routes. They both had a solid game. Last night. I know Beckham had, more receptions. They both scored a touchdown, so both are really good options. I'd say at tight end, I know it's popular to stream, but if you want to pay up for some higher price options, I really like the Ravens schedule. Mark Andrews, Dawson Knox is another solid option. Then with Kyle Pitts, too. He's on the field quite a bit and should see targets. So those are really some names, just to kind of hit on all those names quickly that I like over the next 3 weeks for DFS purposes.
You mentioned Odell Beckham and you liking Van Jefferson over Odell Beckham. Is Odell Beckham one of those names to avoid? And if not, then who are some of those names that we need to avoid in DFS for the next few weeks?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say like with Beckham, is a name to avoid. I would just take a look to see what the salary looks like. The reason I like Van Jefferson because he's kind of like under the radar. I guess the best way to look at it, I think of like if you're looking at Walmart, you're looking like the Great Value brand and the brand of like another product. Van Jefferson's Great Value. Odell Beckham's like the name brand. They're still both really good options, still taste the same. I just, I like Van Jefferson's game, and he's been solid. Even since Odell Beckham has gotten more snaps in like a full-time role. But I would say some names that I'm not really excited about that I really wouldn't want to have in lineups is, Matt Ryan is one. I'm like, it's been hard for the Falcons to land like some really big plays. And you're really looking like in DFS someone that's going to be able to kind of propel your lineup to the next stratosphere. Regardless of the salary, I just don't see Matt Ryan being one of those guys. Mac Jones, I do like his game, for this year. But he showed you in the previous game before the bye, I'm like, what the low could look like. Because the Patriots may just say, hey, we want to run the football, and we're just going to run it. And Mac Jones, we don't care if you throw 2 or 3 times a game. So I know that's extreme, but we did see that, a couple of weeks ago. Carson Wentz is another one. Don't really want anything to do with him. At running back, I love Najee Harris, love his game, what he brings to the table, all those intangibles. But he's just really tough to trust right now with the Steelers leaning more on the passing game. Antonio Gibson, Miles Sanders, the Packers backfield. Those are some players that I don't really want to prioritize in DFS. Wide receiver, guys like Brandon Cooks, Michael Pittman, Terry McLaurin. I just rather look at other options.
I love it. Somebody said this. Let's be honest, Odell got picked up by the Rams because of his name and the fact that the Rams are trying to establish themselves as the Lakers of football in LA in a crowded sports market. Look, Crispy's hilarious. So what I want to know is, I didn't hear too much about Russell Wilson. And even Crispy mentioned this earlier, right? Russell Wilson needs a new team. But he hasn't been producing a lot. In your mind, is he somebody to avoid in the next few weeks?
Yeah, from like a DFS lens, or are we talking seasonal?
Like seasonal.
Yeah, that's tough because you don't really have a lot of options at quarterback. It just depends on the size of your league and if you want to strain. But I'm thinking about the matchups. I know they got the Rams in Chicago, and then Detroit. So I would say he's not someone I'm overly excited about using like in lineups. But if you don't have any other viable options, then I would throw him out there. I did like what I saw last week, because he threw for 260 passing yards, and the last time he threw for I would say over 250 yards was back in week 3, I believe, against the Vikings. And so you're just watching these performances, and we know what Russell Wilson's capable of. But I think we saw more glimpses of that going into last week's game, and he delivered. The touchdowns have always been there over the last 3 weeks, but I would say he's someone that you can trust. But I'm thinking if there's other players that are above him that you may want to roll the dice with. Maybe even someone like Taysom Hill's like an intriguing one, just because of the Saints' schedule. But then you look at his rushing ability. But again, it's not many names that I'm thinking I would start that player over Russell Wilson. And again, I'm not talking about if I've got like Patrick Mahomes or Matthew Stafford or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. Not those guys. I'm talking about like the bottom end of like the QB1 tier. Yeah, so I would say it's kind of tough for me to think of a name that I would start like over him. That bottom tier, I would say.
Look, I'm glad we went to the wide angle so we can see the guitars now, man. So,
Yeah.
yo, we have to talk about this. Thank you so much for the information so far. Look, if you're out there, I know that this information should be able to help you as you're on your playoff push, right? That's why we're doing this, so we can help you out, right? And win that championship, maybe bring one of those trophies home. But also, so we're blessed because when we talk about fantasy, you're versatile in fantasy. It's not just football with you. You also write about basketball and provide information on basketball as well on Twitter. So we're gonna bring that into the fold too, because we have a fantasy basketball league as well. And so we want to know some information. So in your opinion, right? Who are some fantasy basketball sleepers? And I saw you mention one, right? He plays for New Orleans. I just said that. I saw you mention one who plays for New Orleans. I just saw that on Twitter not too long ago. Because look, we not only follow you on Twitter, but we also, when you write articles, we also put that out, right? And so, we retweet that stuff all the time. And so if you can help us out, give us some players fantasy basketball wise who are sleepers.
Yeah, and I just, because my mindset, like especially when it comes to like fantasy basketball, because it changes like like every couple of days, because there's so many games that are played. I'm like, you identify like these additional players are getting, getting more minutes, and they're taking minutes away from somewhere else. So I would say some names that kind of come to mind. I'm thinking kind of waiver wire, like in my mind now, that are available, especially if you're playing in ESPN leagues. That should be available in greater than 40% of ESPN leagues. I'll say like a point guard, like I really like Ricky Rubio, with the Cavaliers. What he's bringing to the table. He's like really an under the radar guy. What I like with his usage rate, his usage rate this season's like 24.5%, and I'm like, he's the leader, the second unit in Cleveland, and the usage is there and the production's there, so he's someone that I like, especially if you need like steals and assists in addition to like points and some of those other stats. Seth Curry's been solid. I know he's still available like in a lot of ESPN leagues. Desmond Bain, I think that's one name I may have mentioned on Twitter. I tweet a lot, so I think I may have mentioned him. You may have seen one of those tweets, with the Grizzlies. So if you need a shooting guard, I like him quite a bit. Dante DaVincio, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, with the Milwaukee Bucks. He's expected to make his season debut on Wednesday. So I know he was solid last year if you look at his per game stats. So he's a guy that I was surprised to see his roster percentages as low as they were. He's only rostered like in I think a little bit under 40% of ESPN leagues. Like a small forward, Dylan Brooks is someone I like quite a bit. I know you're talking about with the Hornets, with Kelly Oubre Jr.
Yes.
Like him quite a bit. Aaron Gordon, he's still like undervalued in my opinion with the Nuggets, just given the injuries that they're dealing with. And another name like at center that comes to mind is like with the Pistons is Isaiah Stewart. I like him quite a bit. As a rim protector, he's got solid rebounding numbers. Could even see some more touches like in the paint, which can help his overall fantasy value. So those are just some names off the top of my head that I'm thinking that are potential sleepers that you can get off the waiver wire this week that can help.
I love that. Look, we're going to go into this next thing. We normally do trade wins for football, right? When we do trade wins for football, we normally kind of give some trade scenarios. We're going to do that for basketball because, the trading deadline for fantasy football is gone. We have some questions from the audience really quick. So I'll bring this out. Have you ever thought about covering competitive eating for ESPN?
You know what? I've never thought about that, but hey, if it's a market for it, then I think it's something we should consider. I'll bring that up to my boss.
Hey,
I'll bring it up. So that's all I'll say.
You'll definitely look. You'll definitely have. These are all different food items from Chris. You'll definitely have one reader for sure. There's another question here. So start two, right? Start two. Either Mooney, Pittman, or Ayuk, Osborne, right? I think these are the four options: Mooney, Pittman, Ayuk, Osborne. Start two of those four. In your opinion, who you're starting there?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Mark. Yeah, I'm leaning towards Ayuk and Pittman as well. It's just tough to trust Mooney. I know he showed us what he's capable of, but it's just tough to trust with Justin Fields under center, not Andy Dalton.
Love it. All right, cool. Now let's hop into this game we call Fantasy Trade Wins. Right, I'll just bring up three scenarios really quickly, and then as I bring up the scenario, you come in and you say which, what would you do? Would you make the trade or not? You're on the team. You have Lonzo Ball, right? As one of your starters, Lonzo Ball, and somebody's offering you Russell Westbrook. Do you take the trade or no?
Okay. So you've got Lonzo Ball and Russell Westbrook. Woo! Russell Westbrook or Ball. Man, that's more challenging than what you know what? I know the turnovers of Russell Westbrook drive people crazy. I know they do. But I would end up going with Westbrook on that one. Yeah, I would go with Westbrook, yeah.
So you would take the trade?
Yeah, I would take the trade. If I'm the guy that's getting Westbrook, I would take it.
Love it. Okay, yeah. Okay. Awesome. Here's the next one. You, going into the draft, you wanted to outsmart some people, right? You saw some stuff going on. So you decided to stash Ben Simmons. Somebody else decided to stash Kyrie Irving, and they want to make a trade.
I'm way more optimistic about Ben Simmons playing basketball this year than Kyrie Irving. So I would go with Simmons. Now I know both of them have kind of showed. Well, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. They've kind of shown their personality a little bit with how they handle these situations. But I think you're at more of a risk with Irving, just given some of the other things that he's taken time away from basketball for. You're just always at risk of the random, DNP, the do not play. But I think with Simmons, if he gets to a team that he wants to be a part of, I think he'll be motivated, and I believe he'll perform. That's why I would go with Simmons.
Okay. I like that. I think you're absolutely right there. So if Simmons gets to a team, he's playing, and there's no question about it.
Yeah. I think he's still been obviously staying in shape, taking care of himself. He's just waiting. He's kind of playing hardball and waiting to get that deal with the team that he wants to be with. And so there we go.
But I think even if Irving does, even if all the restrictions are lifted and everything is fine, he still finds another reason not to play.
Yeah, if you look at his history, I'm like personal reasons that can mean a lot of different things for Kyrie Irving.
True. All right, cool. So you're on the team. You have the Joker, right?
Okay.
You have the Joker, but you also have Trae Young. Let me see. So you have Trae Young, you have Holiday, right? Drew Holiday. You have D'Angelo Russell.
Okay.
And you have the Joker. For centers, you have John Collins, Capella, right? Yep, that's about it for centers. And you have Mark Cannon. I forgot Mark Cannon from Cleveland, right? Like these are your, and I'm probably saying that wrong, but these are all your this is your lineup, okay?
Okay, gotcha.
Somebody offers you Steph Curry for Joker. Do you take that trade or no?
Yeah, you got to get Steph. Yeah. I'm like if I have any opportunity to get Steph Curry, I would do it.
Wow. Okay, cool.
You're talking about? Let me clarify. You're talking about all which players? Not all of those players, right?
No, you're not trading all those players, right? You're just trading the Joker.
Just Joker. Okay, all right. Just want to make sure. I'm looking at your reaction. I'm like, let me make sure I understand this. So, just to make sure. Everyone's oh my goodness. No, go ahead.
I wanted to make sure you knew. Who you had supporting. Like if you lost Joker, right? Who else did you have? So you have John Collins still. You still have Clint Capella. You still have some centers.
Yeah,
I wanted to
I got you. I'm tracking with you. Yeah, it's again, it's difficult because of everything that the Joker brings to the table. I'm more for messing with that. see, I'm like, I get where that viewer's going with this. I'm thinking about like all the double doubles and all those different things, but I'm thinking I could find like centers or rebounds and those things on the waiver wire. But whenever Steph like really goes off, I'm like you're getting a ton of points, you're getting assists, and you're getting some rebounds. So it's very close, but I would still go with Curry there if I can land Curry. With that roster that you mentioned.
Okay, awesome. And here we go. Now we're going to switch off into football. These are really quick. It's called trust fall, right? Give me red light, green light, or yellow light on these, right? Okay. Green light means that, I trust them fully, right? Like start them, don't even think about it, right? Yellow light means I start them with caution, right? Red light means no, don't do that, right? I wouldn't do that at all, okay?
All right.
So we have 3 of these. I'll give you the scenario, and I'll give you the style of league, okay?
Okay, gotcha.
All right. This week you have Melvin Gordon in a 10-team league, PPR, going against Cincinnati. Do you start him for full confidence, start with caution, or don't start at all?
Yeah, I was thinking once you mentioned this, I would yellow light. Just to start him, and like it depends on what other options that you have, but in many cases, I'm like he's a top 24 running back, so you're going to start him. What caused me to be a little bit hesitant, where you mentioned like with 10-team, because that's really shallow. I just don't know who else is there, but in many cases, I think you're going to start Gordon, so I'll go with yellow light there.
Okay, awesome. Here we go. You're in a 8-team league.
8-team league. Okay.
Non-PPR.
Okay.
You got Chuba Hubbard going against Buffalo. Yellow light, red light, green light for Chuba Hubbard versus Baltimore this week.
In an 8-team league, I'm thinking red light. There's gotta be some other options. There's got to be some other options out there that you can that you can get in an 8-team league. Now, if we're talking 12 or 14, I'll be like, yeah, but he's not. He doesn't even have the backfield to himself. I'm like, he's still going to be sharing it with Amir Abdullah. So yeah, I'm going to go off the angle that there's other options out there, superior options.
There has to be something better, right? If it's an 8-team league.
Exactly.
I was thinking the same exact thing. That must be something better. All right, cool. So here's the last one. Trust fall. This is near and dear to me. It's the Trust fall 12-team league, right?
Okay.
Quarterback passing touchdowns count for 4 points.
Okay.
But rushing touchdowns count just as normal rushing touchdowns do.
Like
right?
6. Okay.
Yep, for 6 points. You got Taysom Hill versus the Bucks. Do you trust him? Is it, red light, don't trust him, yellow light, start with caution, or green light, start with no thoughts about it?
Yeah, I would say green light on that one. I still have Hill ranked as I think I have him ranked at 10 or 11. I just did rankings this morning, so I'm still confident in him in this matchup. It's really with the rushing ability. Like, he may be inconsistent from time to time as a passer, but he does enough to get the job done. But it really comes down to the rushing ability. He's going to be able to get yards on the ground and touchdowns. So I would say green light.
And he is rushing like nobody's business right now. He's going to over 100 yards in the game. Like, that's crazy right now for a quarterback. And that's what he's doing. So awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. You don't even know. This will help a lot of people as they move forward to a championship. You're very active on Twitter, right? You're writing all the time. Can you let people know where they can, because somebody had a very specific question. So when they have very specific questions that they want to reach out to you about, where can they reach you? How can they get your opinion on those?
Yeah, no. I would say, first of all, before I do that, too, thanks again for the invite. It's good catching up with you in this venue, I'd say. So we'll have to do it again. I would say the best place to reach me is on Twitter at Eric N. Moody. So answer a lot of questions. Every question that I get, I do my best to answer it. I do a lot of ask me anything sessions for where you can ask me any question, kind of music I like, movies, fantasy questions, whether it's basketball or football. But you can check out all my content over at ESPN. So I write about NFL, NBA, fantasy sports, and betting. So all my content is there. But, as you mentioned, very active on Twitter. Always happy to engage there. So just follow me, hit me up with a question. I'll be happy to get back to you.
Love it. So in the spirit of your ask me anything, right? Crispy's here for it. So here he goes. He says, USFL or XFL? What's your favorite?
Oh, wow. It's crazy. I kind of like the XFL.
Okay.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. They're deliberately trying to do something that was a little bit different. So you kind of have that WWE, or if you old school WWF flair, that you have with it. So yeah, I would say XFL.
Look, I'm not gonna lie to you. When the XFL came back this time, it was really different. It was cool. They did the in your face interviews, which I thought were really cool, right? Like after you throw your second pick of the game, they just come and say, "Hey, that was a crazy pick. How'd you feel about that?" I thought that was insane. So I'm with that. I'm with the XFL too. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We truly appreciate you. Hey, look, y'all go out. Y'all see what's at the bottom of the screen. You go and give him a follow. Make sure you're following Mr. Moody everywhere. He's writing all the time. He's answering questions all the time. You can ask him anything, and he's open to. He's going to address your question the best way he can. Awesome follow on Twitter as well. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. Look, for those people, if you're listening, if you're paying attention to this, stop being prideful. Get this information. Let it help you go and win a fantasy championship. We love you. We thank you. And we appreciate you. Mr. Moody, our last question. We are a Christian podcast, so we always ask this question. If people, are listening to what you're doing, right, following what's going on with you, and they're excited, they say, hey, man, you know what? I like Mr. Moody. I like Eric, man. I think he's a cool guy. I want to pray for him. How can people pray for you and keep you lifted up as you move through your sports career?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would yeah, I would just say pray for health. Health is important. Just in this day and age, just for me personally, with being from losing both of my parents. I lost my mom to cancer, and it was really like a little bit over a year later, losing my father as well. So I would just say health is important, and family. So really just to pray for those things.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We'll
hmm
keep you lifted up with prayer. Sorry to hear about that. Um,
Oh yeah, no, it was years ago. It's getting close to maybe close to a decade ago, but it's still just something I think about often. As I get older. I have two kids. Married, so just that family dynamic and just health is something that's often overlooked and important. It's just something that I think more people should prioritize. Because it just really starts there.
yes, sir. We'll keep
Whether it's
you.
physical or mental health, so they're both aligned. So.
Yes, sir. We'll definitely keep you lifted. Thank you so
hmm
much for joining
Yeah.
us, and we appreciate you. I'm addressing that
hmm
question as well. All right, y'all. We love y'all. We out.
All right. Take care.